everybody, and welcome to the Insurance Journal's Academy of Insurance's weekly webinar Aftershow. I'm your host, George, and joining me for the Aftershow today is the Director of the Academy of Insurance, Mr. Patrick Wraight. Today's class was Mitigating Risk in the Subcontractual Relationship Through Insurance. I said that deliberately slowly. I didn't want to miss a syllable. It's one of our longer titles. Patrick, welcome to the Aftershow. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, George. Thanks for having the Aftershow. This is one of my favorite things to do.
Absolutely. Right, ditto, right back at you. So the class today, given by Michael DeFelice, an expert in the field, talked about how to construct insurance requirements in a typical contract. So if a contract is typical, like a construction contract is typical, does typical mean that the requirements should already be there, or is a typical construction contract bespoke and always TBD, like in terms of the risk, in terms of the requirements? I mean, is a contract that not typical in and of itself, or is it typical to have this, to need to adjust everything constantly?
Yeah. So in a typical construction contract, what you're likely to find are some fairly, boilerplate kind of requirements, right? In particular, you're thinking about either local governmental requirements or simply the requirements that are brought to bear when entering into an agreement. And sometimes those boilerplate requirements may need a little bit of tweaking. You might need to add an additional condition or modify a condition so that not only do you meet the perhaps statutory requirements in the area, but the specific requirements of the individual project.
Got it. So there really isn't a typical contract, or is it typical to be atypical?
I'd say that there's kind of there's the base level wording, and then they can change it from there. In fact, if it's a relatively benign kind of contract, simple, straightforward, small building, whatever it is, there may be no need to make a change. But depending on the complexity of the project, you may have much higher detailed requirements.
And it seems like there's always a need to look out for risk. So is there always going to be risk involved no matter how hard all the parties work on to get the contract the way everybody wants it? Or is there always risk anyway, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's always risk in anything that we're doing, right? And part of the reason that the contract is important is that it details how the transfer of risk is going to be accomplished so that those entities who could be ultimately responsible for anything that happens are potentially held responsible. For example, if there's a construction project and one of the subcontractors does something to cause somebody else bodily injury or property damage, the subcontractor and any contractor above, the general contractor and a higher level sub, whatever, could potentially be pulled into a claim or a lawsuit. And the idea of the contractual risk transfer is to transfer that risk to the appropriate party so that we don't have this pile of insurance policies that have to be dealt with. And so that if the general contractor is brought into a suit, they could say, well, here, I'm an additional insured on this contract, and so on this insurance policy, so go back to that policy.
So contractors, subcontractors, and the client all have to deal with the different risks related to construction contracts. Should they all have a say in how the contract reads, or who of those three entities is the most responsible for making sure that risk is mitigated?
I would say ultimately the person or entity who could be perhaps responsible. I like to say that the consumer, the person or the entity who's having the work done, especially in a larger project, they ought to know enough about the transfer of risk. But not every consumer, not every entity that's getting into a construction deal has that full understanding. So probably the general contractor should be very well versed in this kind of contractual risk transfer. But I would say that everybody in the chain ought to know what their risks are and what risks are being added to them by contract.
So it's the responsibility pie should be sliced up equally among every entity that's involved in mitigating risk related to a particular contract and how it reads. Yeah. Okay, got it. Well, Patrick, that right there, that's one of those insurance topics where there's so much to know that as long as you know the basic things, like everyone's responsible, there's always risk. There's different levels of risk based on how extensive the contract is, but there's but it all could be a big, like you said, I like your phrase, a big pile of risk. That's what we need to know.
That's right. So, and honestly, with this particular session, Michael is an expert in the realm of contractor risk, and works very diligently for an entity that deals in this quite a bit. And that's part of the reason why we bring in experts with the Academy, right? It's because none of us knows everything. As much as sometimes it sounds like I think I do, I don't. And we all know certain things better than other things. And so getting an instructor who's truly an expert, or who truly understands a segment of the insurance universe, is a fantastic and wonderful thing.
Absolutely. Speaking of experts on things, we've got a few very distinctly different webinars coming up. Like next week, Joe Harrington is back with his Guns, Violence, and Insurance, which I think was the title of his second album, his insurance class. PFAS and Evolving Risk That Won't Go Away. That's Dr. Brenda Wells on the 15th. And Kevin Amrine is back with Commercial Property, 5 Bombs and How to Defuse Them. Can you give us some inklings as to what we're going to be seeing from and hearing from Joe, Brenda, and Kevin in the following weeks?
Yeah, Joe's going to give us I don't know if it will be in an hour. You can only go so far and into so much depth, right? But Joe's going to give us a great session on the intersection of gun violence in particular and insurance, where we're seeing the rise of active shooter coverage. We're seeing the rise of coverages that exist because shooting events can happen. And because, you think about this, if something happens at a location, in a public place, at a school, or at a business, that business might be brought into a claim or a suit because they somehow allowed or didn't stop the event from happening. And so this class is going to give us some good information related to this particular growing problem in our society. Okay. And talking about growing problems, Brenda Wells is coming back to talk to us about PFAS and these kinds of what they call forever chemicals that don't break down ultimately. Has been likened to this generation's asbestos or silica. And so this is an important session about, again, something that's not going away and something that is of growing concern. And she's going to bring her normal depth of wisdom and personality to the class. So we're looking forward to that.
Excellent.
And Kevin Amrine's going to bring us, I love how he puts it, 5 property insurance bombs. And these are going to be issues in property insurance policies, primarily commercial, who are could potentially an issue in the event of a claim. And so he's going to really dive into those things. And of course, 5 of them in an hour, that's going to be pretty rapid fire, but it'll be a good session. It'll be a great session. We always appreciate when Kevin can be with us, and all of our instructors. Again, we have such a depth of instructor talent, and I'm so very thankful for the people that come and bring us these sessions.
Absolutely. Well put. Very well put. Patrick, thank you. Patrick,
I had a minute to think about it.
The calendar that's up and coming. That's just the rest of May. We've got tons of stuff in June, July, the rest of the year. So if you're a member of the Academy, you're in for several treats. If you're not a member of the Academy, ask us how you can join. We can hook you up. Patrick, thank you for joining us today for the after show. Mitigating risk in the subcontractual relationship through insurance. Sounds very like a Japanese monster movie, like the literal translation. But I want to thank Michael DeFelice for giving that class, and Patrick, absolutely. Thank you for coming to the after show. Thanks everyone for coming to the after show. And this is your host George saying, take care of yourselves, and we will talk to you soon. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.